I told you before, I didn't want you to read this crap. I never saw such rotten crap in my life. Where do you get this shit? Who sells it to you? I'm talking to you, young man. You want to answer me when I'm talking to you. You remember who puts the friggin' bread on the table around here, don't you?
Stan, don't be too hard on him. All the kids read them.
My boy isn't all the kids. You want to know where this is going, Billy? In the garbage. Right into the friggin' garbage. Now, you got any smart mouth about that?
No, it's any worse than the books you keep in your dresser. Those ones under your underwear. Those sex books.
Stan, you didn't have to...
Get him? Not only do I find out he's reading this crap, he's a goddamn little snoop as well.
No, wasn't like that!
Come closer, please. I've something to tell you. Ladies and gentlemen, how do you do? You are invited on a guided tour of a world of darkness. Your nightmares become reality.
Blood and Black Rum Podcasts. Antholoween.
Welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum Podcast. I'm Ryan from Cultsploitation.com, and I'm joined by my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
We are back with our Antholoween specials. We've been doing Antholoween all month long in September, and then now it's October, and we're still doing Antholoween because...
Officially in the spooky season.
Yeah, it's a Spooktober time. We're actually doing the month of Halloween now. We're into it. We always start early.
No, we did that last year.
What's that?
A month of Halloween.
We did do that, yeah. We actually did 2 months of Halloween because of all the Halloween movies. But this year we've been doing Antholoween, and it's a series that we do where we're working through the decades, doing anthology films, anthology horror films. It's been fun so far. We've done the Black Sabbath from Mario Bava. We did last week Tales from the Crypt, the movie, which was a fun little series of short films. And now this week we have one of, I would say, most horror fans' favorite anthology films ever. One that has
everything.
Basically, yeah. Pretty much everything. Influenced by Tales from the Crypt for sure. Influenced by EC Comics. And also from...
It's got George Romero.
Yeah, very respected people. George Romero as director. Stephen King as writer.
Tom Savini on effects.
Yeah,
Tom Atkins.
Yeah, I mean, you can just keep going. Ted Danson.
By the way, Ted Danson, was he like his mid-20s in this? He's already got like a giant ball of gray hair on his chest.
Does, yeah. But obviously, if you don't know what we're talking about now, turn the podcast right off. That's ridiculous. You should know. We're talking about Creepshow.
Oh, you know what? It's because I said George Romero, not George A. Romero. That's why that would throw you off.
You didn't get it from that. That's
different.
Right.
Somebody else with a different SAG card.
Yeah. Yeah. We're talking about Creepshow. We had actually said last week that we're not doing Creepshow.
No, not we.
Well, I did.
You did.
I made a mistake on the timeline.
Mr. Horror Buff.
I made a mistake on the timeline. And so we just decided, you know what? We're going to do it anyway because we wanted to stick with the timeline, basically. We wanted to go with earliest to latest. So also, we just like throwing weird random things at you. So, before I forget, plug here. We did a show for the J Movie Talk podcast. Again, as we did last time with the Friday the 13th parts 1 through 3 trilogy. we're returning to that show with Phantasm 2. So I don't know exactly when it's going to release, but we did do an episode for them. So keep an eye out for that, J-Movie Talk Podcast. Thanks for having us on there. It was a lot of fun.
Always a pleasure.
Even though Martin didn't enjoy the movie. You win some, you lose some, you know?
Listen, they're not all going to be winners.
It's true. Man, it's been a busy October already.
I know.
And it's only day 2. It's going to get busier. So Creepshow. We've wanted to do Creepshow for a little while. It's a really fun movie. It's one of those movies that is a really big cult classic. And it is a cult classic in a lot of ways because of how many just big names are in it. And we mentioned a few of them already. But not only that, it's also the direction of the film, the cinematography, the photography, the lighting. All of those kind of go together to create a perfect storm of an anthology film that follows in the footsteps of Tales from the Crypt from 1972, along with the EC comics of the same name, Tales from the Crypt, and The Vault of Horror, and Creepy. Many of those anthology series of comics from the 50s were really influential to this film. And you can see that directly in the photography of the film.
I'll say it's going to lean on how I feel about this film more so than the Tales from the Crypt. But I will say this film, done at the right time, the technology's there to do the ideas I'm sure they probably wanted to do in Tales from the Crypt, but probably couldn't execute as well, like the nice comic book style paneling and artwork. It's kind of like, if you thought Tales from the Crypt was good, well, you know what? We're going to do it even better, because we can now.
Yeah, I mean...
The means is there.
I mean, you definitely see the inspiration from Tales from the Crypt. Then again, the idea behind it was actually to make a movie that is like a comic book. I mean, and that is, in itself, a way that makes this movie stand out from some of the other anthology films, because it really does resemble a comic book in that
almost heavy metal comic book artwork.
And not only that, it's not afraid to go to be a little bit weird with its lighting and things like that, where it doesn't necessarily match real life. Like, I would say that sometimes when you're attacked by a beast, the lighting doesn't just immediately go red and blue around you. But
are you sure?
I've never had it happen.
That's
so
how
maybe.
I know in my life if things are if I'm about to run into trouble. If all of a sudden things just turn completely blood.
And then there's like a little lightning bolt behind your head.
Yeah.
Like, no way! What's happening? Yeah. I've never had it happen to me, but I'm assuming that doesn't happen when you get attacked by a bear or something. But I do think that the idea behind the aesthetics of the film is something that has really, really made a lot of people appreciate this movie, because it is so different from other anthology films, and because it really does match comics, and especially if you read the EC comics comic books from the 50s. The color scheme and everything is really, really similar, and it's a great. And not only that, but then they also imitate that artwork throughout the film, as you see the comic being kind of paged through. That gets thrown out of the house by Tom Atkins, that asshole.
They're committed to the theme.
That's right. It is a heavily theme based movie, and after our little beer talk session, we're going to get into that in depth detail with each of the stories in the film. So
there's 5 of them.
There are 5 of them. 5 of them at 2 hours long for this film. On the longer side of an anthology film. Most anthology films don't run 2 hours. They try to get in and out with like 4 stories at 20 minutes apiece. But no, Creepshow, a little bit different. So before we get into all that, just want to bring up the beer talk that we've got on the show today. As you know, we've been trying to stick with the fall themes for the Antholoween episodes, and we've only ever had Octoberfest on the show so far. So we do need to change that at some point, but I know that today when I went out to get the beer, I just wasn't in the cider mood, so I didn't get one. But there is a possibility that we get a cider on the show every now and then for the next couple episodes. But today we have Half Acres Lagertown Octoberfest on here.
What a clusterfuck that can label is.
It's a pretty intensive can, huh? This is like when someone goes to a Renaissance fair and gets a tattoo.
Or takes a hit of acid
before the Renaissance fair.
Before it's going on, then.
Well, I don't think I've had Half Acre before.
Neither have I. Actually, I've never seen any other beer around here.
It's not very common, and let's see, where's it from? Chicago, Illinois. Good old Chicago.
That'd be why.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of those around here. And like you said, I have never seen it before. However, I do think that they make a pretty good Oktoberfest. This Lagertown Oktoberfest is a pretty straightforward American Oktoberfest.
I'd say a lot more hop forward. Definitely got a hoppy bitterness to it.
Yeah, the malts are pared back a little bit. And I would say that the Lagertown element to it is pretty accurate because it has a very light mouthfeel. Light, and it's only about 5.7%, which is about maybe a little under average for an Oktoberfest. But I think it's pretty good. I definitely think that it's probably not one of my favorite Oktoberfests because I prefer those heavy malt notes forward in my Oktoberfest. But I do think it's a pretty good beer.
Drinkable, very drinkable.
Yeah, very drinkable. And it is one, if you've heard us talk...
Compared to our last episode, the Left Hand.
Yeah.
Not the last... Was it last?
That wasn't the last one. There was the one before.
Okay.
Yeah. Compared to that one, which is very malt heavy, and it becomes like almost too rich to drink at a certain point. This one is much more drinkable and sessionable. The problem with the sessioning is that you only get 4 beers in the pack because they're tall boy cans, and they're kind of expensive for 4 cans. So your session is going to
hate that
diminish.
That's a thing.
What, doing a 4-pack of cans?
Yeah. You should never do that unless it's like some kind of like rich stout or porter, like an old wine, something that no one's going to be sitting like, I'm going to be pounding away at these.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know why exactly you would do like a 4-pack of an Oktoberfest or something light like that.
It could even be like a double IPA. 6-pack it up. I don't know.
More for less. That's what you want. More for less.
Yeah. No, I do like it. It's very drinkable, very sessionable compared to a lot of other Oktoberfest. It is pretty malty and sweet, but I do think there is a noticeable enough of a hop presence in it that kind of pairs that maltiness back because you do get that hop bitterness. I do like it.
Do you want to know the funny thing about as we've been doing these Oktoberfest beers on the show? You get to a certain point where you're like, yeah, it's a good Oktoberfest. And that's it. Like that, our detail about Oktoberfest has slowly waned.
Okay, so as we've done almost 150 episodes, probably 100 episodes has probably been some type of IPA. I guarantee by episode 10, we were like, you know what? Tastes like an IPA.
Yeah. It's hard. It really is. We're not like, we don't have the sophisticated palate.
No one does. They're lying to you. Mike Birbiglia in Orange is the New Black, when he's sitting there, swirling his whiskey and scotch, he doesn't know. He's lying to you.
One thing that I will say is that the biscuity flavor of this one is lessened compared to the Left Hand Brewing that we had.
Oh, absolutely. It's bready, but not biscuity.
Less biscuit. I think I prefer more biscuit. But that's the only way that I can
You should just drink yourself a nice porter.
Yeah. That's the only way I can really vocalize the difference between these beers. This one's less biscuit.
You know what we should do? We should do like a live podcast when we're at Beer Fest. Trying all the beers and just be like, yep.
It's pretty good.
It's good, yeah. What do you think? Yeah, it's like an IPA. Awesome, man. Anything else, Dad? Yeah,
well, I can tell you that we wouldn't be able to do a live show because this is what you'd hear.
Well, we'd have to do it in a little break corner that they got set up.
I still think you would just get like so much
back noise.
Back noise and people throwing up and yeah.
We'd have to do it at Red Robin afterwards.
There you go. Yeah, the Red Robin. Annual Red Robin Festival.
Or, the Midas.
All right, let's talk about Creepshow. We got 5 stories to get into, and I got a lot to say about each of them. So,
Let's start with the beginning.
Start with the beginning. The wraparound story. You know what? And I was thinking when I was watching it, I was like, I'm gonna need to remember this term because I always forget it when I'm talking about it, and now I can't remember what it is.
Wow.
But
so helpful.
The term is basically so it's the wraparound story.
Hey, you say that every time.
I know, and I forget the actual term for it, but it's okay.
Ring around the rosy?
Yeah, the wraparound story. It is a story that actually it's sort of like meta, right? Because we're watching this wraparound story, and then Stephen King's son is actually the kid that plays that's in the wraparound opening part, and he is Joe Hill. Although in the credits you'll see him credited as Joe King. It's a nice little tidbit of information for you that I actually did not know until I watched the credits yesterday.
I will say too, because we weren't alive for then. I mean, I know, like, especially in the 80s, they were pumping out fucking Stephen King movies, like, left and right. In my mind now, I think about it, it's hard to believe, like, man, he's been around for, 40 plus fucking years.
He's been around for a long time.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. So, 82 is, he's still, we're still climbing. We haven't gotten to,
prime,
you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and the other thing is that, a lot of times Stephen King's movies are really just adaptations of his stuff. There's not that many Stephen King movies that actually he wrote, right? So he'll allow the name of the storyline of his films or of his books to be made into film, but he doesn't normally write them or adapt them to screen. But Creepshow is actually one of those films that he wrote, and they're not really based on any storyline. I mean, some of them are based on some storylines that he wrote, but these are really sort of original ideas for the film.
None of them are based off of.
I don't know. I don't believe so. Not that I can think of. I can't think of any off the top of my head that I can think of as that were actually stories that he wrote. But it's possible that I'm wrong. It's completely possible I'm wrong. But I just can't think of any. I can't think of it off the top of my head that they were. However, the first wraparound part of that film is it involves his son, Joe King, who is playing a little kid who's reading an EC Comics-like comic book. And Tom Atkins plays the dad, and he's just fucking pissed off that he's reading a comic book.
Which the best part about all of this is, out of all the people not to have a credit in the film, Tom Atkins is one. And I told Ryan, the reason is, you don't need Tom Atkins to have a credit, because everyone knows
That's Tom Atkins. You don't need a credit.
It's kind of like if you were to see John Saxon in a film at this point. Do you need a John Saxon credit? There's John Saxon!
You would just rather have it be the credit being Tom Atkins' hair, played by.
Yeah, which toupee. His hair is atrocious in this. Absolutely atrocious. I can't believe you didn't notice it. When he moves at time, his hair's moving around.
I'm curious now if anybody because the version that we watched for Creepshow was the Scream Factory edition, which is pretty much it's pretty much the definitive edition of Creepshow right now. And there's 4 audio commentaries on it. I'm questioning whether anybody mentions it in one of those.
I don't think he really was wearing a toupee, but
you just think the shape of his hair at that time.
Yes, because it's got that we're coming on the 70s, but we're still holding on to some of the things. He's got that. It's just very unsettling.
As you said, he almost does look like Dennis Farina, or even in some ways Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, a blonde-haired Dennis Farina or Burt Reynolds, yeah.
I guess I didn't notice it too much, but yeah, you're right. His hair does look a little weird. It's also funny because Tom Atkins at that time was not that old. And he's got a nice silver going on.
Everyone does it. Like I said, Ted Danson's like not even 30 yet, and he's got nice,
Wisps of silver.
even if he is 30, again, his chest hair is like half of it's gray.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of it.
Yep. So in the opening, Tom Atkins is pissed about the comic book because he's saying, you know what, kid? You're going to read Penthouse like the rest of us in this house.
That is great. I will say that is like a great, like, kind of like Romero type, like, line. Of like the kid being like, well, you got nudie magazines,
Yeah.
And he's like, you little shit.
And I like how the mom, too, is just
like,
sort of like,
honey.
guys, don't fight. Let him read his comics. That wasn't very nice. And Tom Atkins is basically like the abuser that you don't really actually see abuse. Because he's like sitting there drinking a beer, pouring it out into a fucking glass.
Well, the way we see, later on in the film, like from one of the later stories, spousal abuse or abusing women, it's just a thing that happens.
Yeah, that happened in the 80s, yeah.
So,
It's just like, part of the normal everyday family marriage strife. But I do like... But did you say he has a Narragansett? Is that what he's drinking?
I don't know if it is. I was trying to look, but the label is kind of obscured, so apparently they didn't get paid like they did with Jim Beam. But I would assume it's a Gansett.
Yeah.
Just because of Stephen King being from the New England area.
Could be. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see it.
I would think it'd be some kind of Pittsburgh beer. Because, Romero doesn't leave the Pennsylvania area when he's shooting, so.
But yeah, Tom Atkins pours those out.
Yeah, it was great.
He pours those beers in his glass.
Cracks it open.
Normally, your everyday spousal abuser just cracks open a can and starts going to town on it.
After you crack your woman's head open, you crack a beer open.
But you know what? In this case, Tom Atkins, he's a little bit classier than that.
Well, you can tell
he
by
grabs
his
the glass.
sweater and his buttoned-up shirt.
For the classy abuser.
And you know what? Shame on, most of all, as we joke all about this, and shame on him for pouring that big of a head on his beer. He just wasted half his beer.
You take offense to his pouring mechanism that he's got going.
Yeah, we don't get to see it, but afterwards you see like he's got like a 12-ounce glass, pours only like 6 ounces of it and like 4 of its head. And he's like, honey, please. The child needs discipline. He needs to read the Penthouse.
I was trying to think of a funny name for where a spousal abuser shops for their sweaters. But
do you think he's reading Penthouse, or do you think he's looking at Hustler? Hustler's a little more lower end, It's definitely not Playboy because he's not,
That's the articles, man. You read Playboy for the articles and the Stephen King fiction. Penthouse, you read for the spicy letters. And Hustler
is just dirt.
You just look for the.
You want the luridness.
You want the penetration shots. That's what you want. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe he's. I think he'd be middle Penthouse. That's why I say Penthouse.
He's a good Christian man.
Yep. He wants those spicy letters to be like, this is what my life could be. Instead, I've got my wife ironing my pants, my khaki pants. So the wraparound story kind of ends there, where he's sort of we forgot to mention too the best part. It fucking takes place on Halloween.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, there's jack-o'-lantern in the window. It's Halloween.
That doesn't mean.
No, I mean I don't mean specifically it's Halloween night, but I mean it takes place around Halloween.
You forgot to mention the most disturbing part. That comic book is apparently a first edition collector's edition. Tom Atkins has the fucking gall to roll it up like a goddamn newspaper. Ruined it.
And then he eats it out the
ruined
door.
Joe King could be, rolling in money selling that years later. Like, I catched a pristine Creepshow comic. Nope, ruined. Day one, ruined.
Interesting to note, too, that the Creepshow, I guess the character, the icon, that's part of the comic, sort of looks like the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt.
Well, no, that makes sense, because the whole comic, it's like, it says Creepshow on it, but all the artwork and all it totally looks like it's Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
So it's just like, hey, we couldn't get the naming rights.
Well, in Tales from the Crypt, I don't know that they actually had a Crypt Keeper like that. That kind of looked like the Crypt Keeper from the show. So I just think it's interesting that the ghoul in this one does look a lot like the Crypt Keeper later on.
No, it makes sense.
Just fun.
Because, like I said, this is basically a Tales from the Crypt movie, but didn't get the licensing right for it. So
I do like when the ghoul appears at the window. He's like, hey! He's like Frosty or like Jack Frost appearing at the window, like, hey, I'm here. You know, I'm here. Don't worry about it.
That's a Christmas horror movie we'll have to do one of these days.
Jack Frost.
Yeah. Starring Michael Keaton.
Should we go right to the? Should we finish this wraparound story first? Even though it
because it leads into the pretty awesome opening credits with the comic book, artwork and the title coming up. And it's all comic.
It's great. I love like how you get the paneling artwork and stuff like that throughout all of the film, but the opening shots and especially like as you go transition between the stories when you're turning the comic pages. Pretty great use of that mechanic to get between story to story.
And you'd see all like the little ads, and then it's great seeing too like how each story, like when they start and they finish, like them like as they were in the comic panel.
Yeah, it's a
really great use of it.
It's a good mechanic. So the end of this little wraparound story, as we get out of the comic and back into the real world, is showing that a couple of garbage men, one of them being Tom Savini himself. Don't know if you noticed that either.
Yeah. That's a pretty hard cameo to miss.
No, well, I mean, it is and it isn't, but...
It looks like Tom Savini, and he's acting like Tom Savini. Like, hey, what's this?
Tom Savini and another garbage man are picking up trash on the side of the road. Although they look sort of like hobos rather than garbage men.
I know, like 20 houses behind the way they're like kind of like bopping around.
Yeah. And they pick up the comic and they notice that the voodoo doll advertisement is missing its coupon. So it's a good precursor to what happens next with Tom Atkins getting up. He's going to have a nice breakfast. He's sitting down with the paper, and he's going to have a nice breakfast.
Ryan just spilled his beer.
I did.
There goes $5.
I know. And he's going to have a nice breakfast, sitting down with the paper.
He's had a neck ache all night, though.
Stiff.
Doesn't know why.
And
his wife's sitting there ironing, right next to him.
I know. She's still ironing in the... Wasn't she ironing the night before?
No, she was like sewing jeans.
Oh, maybe I got that. Maybe I got that confused. I thought I was like, she's ironing both times.
Yeah, no, she was
morning
sewing,
and night.
No,
how much iron? How
maybe it's
wrinkled is this guy?
Maybe it's therapeutic for her. Like maybe if he attacks, she's got an iron in hand to
could be
bash him over the head. But no, she was sewing jeans in the nighttime, and now in the morning she's ironing.
I gotcha. So ultimately, what happens is we kind of zoom out to
little Billy Psychopath.
Billy Psychopath, who is sticking needles into a voodoo doll, which is apparently the placeholder for his dad.
Not apparently it is, because Tom Atkins is grabbing his throat and lurching about as Billy's upstairs going, "Teach you to take my comic," and he's just stabbing him in the throat, and before you know it, he's gonna be fatherless. He's gonna wish he never did that.
No, he's not gonna wish he never did that. He loves it. Now he's got his mom all to himself.
All over a goddamn comic book. So you know what that means, kids? Don't read comics.
That's true. This little
end up Billy Psychopath.
Yeah, this little shit's a little psychopath after reading the comics. Yeah, don't read the comics. So that's a wraparound story. That's the whole thing that puts Creepshow together. It's it sort of emphasizes the meta aspect of, he's reading this comic and then we go into the comic and then we come back out again. Interesting stuff.
It's not meta because that wasn't a thing yet.
Well, it is now. I call it meta. All right, so let's get into the first short that we got on this film of 5. The first one is called... I'm trying to think, what is it called?
Bernie Sanders' Raging Father Syndrome.
That's right. That's what it is. Bernie Sanders' Raging Father Syndrome. Now, it's called Father's Day. and it involves a bunch of rich hoity-toities.
Almost borderline, are they New England or are they just English? Yeah.
You can't really tell, right?
Because some of them are talking like they're like, like out in the Berkshires, and some of them are talking like they're out in like Oxford.
Maybe that's from Stephen King's experience. He's just like, yeah, but then again, like, look at the car too, and it sort of looks English.
Nice, like Rolls Royce.
Yeah. So it's hard to tell. It's not really too apparent. But the thing that I like about this first short is that it's so ridiculous and doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And even so, you're still okay to go along with it because the whole idea is kind of weird. It's just about them meeting for Father's Day. And there's a storyline about the crazy aunt who killed her father, and she visits his grave every single year to grieve over what she did, and so we get flashback sequences of this aunt experiencing Father's Day past of like Martin said, Bernie Sanders, who is pounding his cane on a table and bitching about his Father's Day cake. Now, the thing that I wonder about...
Was that ever a thing?
Yeah, Father's
before
Day
you
cake...
gave them crappy socks and ties, it was cakes.
Cake's a thing. Because I've never heard of it. I've never done it for my father. And he's also never beaten me with a cane because I didn't give him one. But I'm just wondering, like, why is it a cake? Where did Stephen King get this from? I don't understand it. But whatever the case, you can't really beat... the guy just yelling and yelling, "Where's my Father's Day cake?"
You're vultures! You're all a bunch of vultures after my money! Where's my Father's Day cake?
The funny thing is that he's probably right. They probably are a bunch of vultures.
Well, they're rich New Englanders, so yes.
They're all after his money. But other than that, the story doesn't really have much else going on. It's just about these people who are set up to be fodder for zombies that come back from the grave.
Well, one zombie.
One zombie. So the short is kind of, in a way, it doesn't really have much of a theme to it. And yet, it's still a lot of fun because everybody takes it extremely seriously. And I think that seriousness adds a lot to it because then the seriousness plays up the corniness of it, and you get a really good, like, smattering of both. And I enjoy that quite a bit from this short. I know Father's Day is probably one of everyone's favorite shorts from Creepshow, and I can see why.
I like it. I will say, out of all of the shorts that use like the comic book paneling and effects, it uses it to a detriment. Because this one, more so than any of the other ones, they use consistently. And at times, it's like, why the fuck are you doing that? Mm. Doesn't make any sense. It's not a transition or anything. It's just like, oh, we're going to add borders around Bernie Sanders going, Father's Day!
Yeah, that's true. It's like the flashbacks get the borders. Like, when they say, earlier with a border. That's
even like they just like if it's like because as we see later on throughout the film, like when like something spooky killer's about to happen, like there's like a comic effect. Even when there's moments like that not happening in this short, for some reason they it's there, and I don't remember it being that prevalent in the film. And so watching this again, I was like kind of like really I don't remember it being like consistent like that.
Yeah.
And then, but after this story, it does get does taper off.
I wonder if they were just like, this is the first one, so we need to
experiment.
Yeah, we need to really, catch people with it, and get them understanding like the comic book
definitely
aspect.
Definitely the shortest too of the.
You think it's the shortest? I think the last one's the shortest.
It'd be either that or the last one.
The one with the cockroaches. Yeah,
because they're both like barely 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think that the last one is the shortest, but this one is not that long either. And I think part of that is just because like there's not that much to the plot. It's literally just a revenge story of.
You're just kind of wondering what's Ed Harris doing here.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
Which in this, you know what? Ed Harris the entire time. I was trying to put, like, what does he look like? He looks like the fucking guy from Dawn of the Dead. Like, we got this, man. We got this by the fucking ass.
Yeah, I like how he's just here, and also I really like the random dance sequence in the middle of just like them swinging together. Again, like I said, all of this plot is sort of like non-existent. Doesn't really have anything going on. You just know, you're just basically getting the second-hand character development of like, yeah, these guys are rich and they're assholes, and
Oh, he's not an asshole.
no, he's not an asshole, but the rest of them are. And you're like,
The fucking mom's a total bitch.
Yeah,
like when
maybe.
he's talking about her daughter, she's like, "Hand me the scones, you hog! Look at her, she's a
such a
hog,
hog.
isn't she, Hank?" And you look at her, it's like, no, it looks like she could eat a few more. She's like
she's pretty skinny.
deathly pale and thin.
She's whipping around that dance floor. Yeah. But most of them are assholes. And that's a sort of thing with Tales from the Crypt. You have those stories they're moralistic stories about assholes, and they get their comeuppance, and they're supposed to be like, maybe I don't want to be like those people. Do you want to be a rich white asshole?
Well, obviously, Billy should have learned his lesson from reading these comics.
He should, yeah.
The moral is, don't be a bastard to your father.
That's true. He should, yeah, that's right. He should have learned from this Father's Day comic, huh? Other than that, though, for Father's Day, there's not really that much else to say about it. I mean, it's a fun short. It has its elements. It has some scares and gore effects, and
The neck snap was awesome.
the next snap is great.
Ed Harris's death is pretty weak because he just sits there and watches the tombstone slowly.
Yeah, fall onto him. He's like, fuck.
And he's just kind of, the way he was acting, like, maybe if I don't move, it won't fall on me.
Yeah, it just kind of
he's
slowly plummets
he's-
off the side. Smash. Actually, and instead, it's actually more of like a
squish. No, it even says in the subtitles, squishes. Squish sound.
Yeah. But other than that, I mean, that's it for Father's Day. It's not my favorite of the Creepshow stories, but it is fun and it does have its moments. And
It's definitely a sign of, like, most of these, they're going to be, scary, but also we're going to have fun.
yeah,
And it's going to be, like, comedy
tongue in
horror.
cheek. Yeah, for sure. The second story that we get is actually starring Stephen King.
On cocaine.
On cocaine, yeah. It's called The Lonely Death of Jordy Verrill. And it is basically led by Stephen King throughout the whole short as he plays Jordy Verrill, a lonely farmer out in...
Somewhere out in New England.
Yeah, somewhere. And he ends up finding a meteor that crash lands in his yard. And he envisions himself bringing it into the meteor department, where they give him
At the college, yes.
Yeah, a lucrative $200.
I just love that when he's daydreaming. He's like, go and give me $200. And they're like, we'll give you 50. He's like, keep counting higher than that. And like 75. He's like, nope, keep going. And they're just like sitting there, like rifling through the bills. He's like, yeah, that's it, $200.
When the highest you can think of for money is $200. It's a good scene though.
Well, he's still got a phone from like the 1930s in his house. Not even a rotary phone. It's like an old like hello,
Yeah, and this is really for Stephen King, who is not an actor, although he appears in many of his films. This is an interesting development for him because it's really majority of the time led by him as a character. There's only a couple scenes where there's another character in it.
Well, there's only three. It's only him, then him daydreaming of the doctor, and then the brief shot of his father.
Yeah, so it's it's a prestige drama for him, playing this guy who accidentally cracks open a meteor and unleashes extreme plant growth across New England.
Early Silent Troll 2.
That's right. Yeah.
He lives in Nilbog.
Yeah, he does. So again, this one is another simplistic storyline. It doesn't have it's not super complicated. It's not complex. It really is just a lot of time lapse between when Geordi cracks open the meteor and then the things that occur afterwards, showcasing Savini's effects with not gore, but with plant-based stuff.
It is unsettling. All like the plant growth and like the moss and
especially like when it gets further along and he's like got it growing as a beard and growing on his skin, on like his chest and stuff.
It's great too because at first when he's got like the little warts on his fingers after touching the meteor, as he said, "Meteor shit." Best line in the whole movie.
Yeah,
is him just going meteor shit. But when he's like looking at the warts on his fingers, he's almost like, "Did I have these before? I don't know. I'm dirty. I'm a dirty farmer."
Yeah.
And then later, when he's like realizing he's got like moss on his tips, uh-oh, shit, I sucked on my fingers.
Yeah.
I wonder what my mouth looks like.
It's, actually, I think the most effective parts are when he's looking at his fingers. And he has those warts on it, and they're kind of like bubbling a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's like the most like body horror element to this film. So I think that's probably the most effective, but I think that otherwise the effects are really good too. And this is one that doesn't really take too much advantage of the comic book coloring of the EC Comics, where it has like the blues and reds of the lighting. It's more so the greens that are prominent through this, and that makes sense because it's all about the plants. But it's more of a green tinged short than the other shorts in this movie, and I think that sets it apart a little bit from the others. Again, I would say that this one is not my favorite. I think it runs a little bit too long for what the plot offers.
Which is just funny because it's pretty short.
It is pretty short, but I do think that the plot itself, there's just not that much there. And so we're tasked with having Stephen King lead us through it, and I don't know that he's a strong enough actor. I mean, he's really playing the most cartoonish character that he can think of.
He even got the nice 50s like cartoony sitcom music every time. He's like, "Oh, you lunkhead, you."
Yeah.
You know.
That and like the sound effects as well that are straight out of like cartoons.
Like, do, 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 do.
Yeah.
I like it. It's not my favorite, but I appreciate it just because of how, you're right, Stephen King's not a great actor, but that's what makes it endearing to me, is just how like fucking sweaty, coked out of his mind he acts in this.
If you know about the background behind this film, Tom Atkins originally wanted to play Geordi, and they were like, "Yeah, actually, Stephen King wrote that, and he's going to play Geordi, so you'll have to pick something else." So ultimately, from the get-go, Stephen King already was like, "Yeah, I'm going to play Geordi in this film."
He probably wrote because he was like, "I want to be a country bumpkin asshole."
Yeah, probably.
This is like, this is what he thinks. Oh, they're good-hearted, but they're a bunch of dumbasses.
It's true.
Who don't know anything.
And as you said, he's got a lot of hair here. He's got a lot of...
Yeah, when you get to see... He's got a shit ton of back hair as he's like getting ready to go into the bathtub. He's got some of like the peat moss growing on his back and stuff, but you can see like, holy crap. What a time to be alive in the 80s when people would just be like, "Oh, he's just got hair."
And this is when he had a nice head of hair as well.
I don't know if it's nice. It's very like a greasy mop top that he's got.
It's awesome.
But it is, like I said, I you're right. It's definitely not the strongest story, but I do think it's charming because it's so endearing, just because of how ridiculous. Because this one, I think more so than any of the stories out of the 5, is supposed to be taken as like lighthearted until you get to the sad end where he's like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, like, "Kill me."
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's it. And
when he turns into the Grinch.
Yeah, either the Grinch or the Grinch in the tree, like in the Christmas tree, where he's pretending like he's taking it out of the house there. Yeah,
because that's all I was thinking of when, like, at the end when he's fully covered. He's the Grinch now, so that's how he came to be and why he's
His
so miserable.
Heart was too small. Yeah. So the next story in this film is Something to Tide You Over. And I think this is my favorite of the Creepshow short stories that we get.
It's definitely the best.
This one is definitely straight out of a Tales from the Crypt comic. It has the grim murder element to it. It has the
supernatural.
Yep, the supernatural. It's got the love triangle, which was often the case in many, like, you know, the smitten lovers and that are cheating on one person. So it's got that. And then it has Leslie Nielsen in here, with Leslie Nielsen playing a very straight character in terms of both, like, zero. I mean, he does actually give some jokes, but they're like on the dark side of humor. And ultimately, he's playing it very, very straight. He's just a murdering guy who loves to drink a tall glass of vodka ice and watch his victims drown in the tide.
And his Bond layer.
Yeah, he is like a Bond-like villain because, as you
Hold
said,
your breath, Mr. Bond.
He's like Jigsaw or a Bond villain who has an intricate trap murder set piece.
His works though.
What's that?
His works though.
Yeah,
it
does.
Like a Bond villain.
His is like a realistic trap, like one that you could expect to actually work, and it's pretty brutal. Something to tide you over, I think, is, you know, so a lot of the other stories are sort of comical in like how they play out. Something to tide you over, I've always seen as a short that is like actually pretty serious throughout most of its, even though Leslie Nielsen is sometimes making cracks about these people drowning in the tide. It's a pretty serious and suspenseful short. And you can definitely see, and I think Ted Danson plays it really well here too. You can see the panic in him as the tide washes over him. And I wonder if that's part of that is actual real life of being buried at sea and, having to shoot those scenes and continually flooded with water. But I find this a really effective short in terms of the tension that it generates, the empathy that you feel for the victims. And then you do get a little bit of the supernatural element towards the end. And if you notice, all of the zombie characters have the same type of voice, like the waterlogged voice, which I like because they stuck to a theme here. They said, all of the dead characters would sound this way, which I like. One thing I have to point out is that I really like the tenacity that Leslie Nielsen shows by actually bringing a TV down from his house and stringing along a bunch of extension cords, apparently, to get it to work down by the beach. That's a feat that I don't know that I'd go through.
And someone in 1982 to be caring enough about electronics to be like, that picture quality looks a little weird. You might want to run a maintaining tape through that VCR.
Check your coaxial cables there. Yeah. They seem like they're not connected correctly.
Just funny too, watching this on Blu-ray. Now when it's like look at these old TVs from the late 70s, early 80s, being like, look at that picture quality.
Oh, one thing
it's pretty.
One thing that I noticed is that when you're in Leslie Nielsen's house and he's watching the TV from the bed, he actually has like 6 TVs on the wall. Mm-hmm. The TV is like fucking 20 inches, and he's watching it from bed.
Yeah, he's got a big screen TV.
I was like, how can he even see that goddamn thing?
It's like the best part. They didn't even make 20-inch TVs anymore. Those are computer monitors.
Yeah, that's small.
Like the smallest I seen now was like a 32, and those are only like $100 now.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I was just like, he's sitting in bed, and the bed is clearly a few feet away. I was like, in our generation, we can't even see that shit anymore.
Like he's old. It's like, how is he able to see that so far away?
But I do like, I like the initiative that he had. He was like, you know what, this guy, I'm going to show him his girlfriend dying. I'm going to string together 20 extension cords to get it from wherever the generator is to this beach.
You just got to think too, like how much when he says he's wealthy, like he's got to be pretty wealthy to have all those TVs, all these CCTV cameras around his compound. He is a wealthy man. It's not like that.
And to own basically his own personal beach. Mm-hmm. I mean, because there's no one else out there. He's not concerned that anybody else is ever going to come to this beach and find these people buried. So, yeah, he's a pretty fucking wealthy guy. But I would say this is my favorite. Leslie Nielsen is a treat here. I think he does a really good job as playing the serious role. It's not something that you see from Leslie Nielsen very often.
No, to be honest with you, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head.
I think he does menacing pretty well, though. I mean, for something that he doesn't normally play.
I think it's usually, well, yeah, because Robin Williams is also somebody that we talked about with the 1 Hour Photo, someone who's traditionally a comedic actor. Mm-hmm. Their comedic leanings, can lead into them being very good at being menacing and foreboding because, we know them as the happy-go-lucky guys, and then when you watch them kind of go from yeah, then to snap into being crazy and angry, it makes it pretty jarring. Like, oh shit!
Yeah, you definitely get a jarring. It's like seeing Leslie. You're like, wow, I've never really seen Leslie Nielsen like this, and so it's weird to see him like this because you're thinking of him and being a comedic person, gonna crack a bunch of jokes or at least be like dry wit, and you don't get that at all from this, and so it sort of takes you out of your element of seeing him there. I've always thought it interesting when you watch a movie and you always recognize the people that are in it, and it sort of feels comforting to you that you recognize people that are in this movie. And this is actually the opposite of that. So when you see Leslie Nielsen, you're comforted by seeing him, that you know him, you like him. He's most of the time a funny person. And in this case, he is playing the exact opposite, and that's sort of adds a different level to how you view this short story. So, probably my favorite of the Creepshow short stories.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. Definitely my favorite. Probably the most memorable for me too.
All right.
Just because them coming back as like seaweed revenants, Ted Danson and his lover, that looked pretty cool.
Yeah, they have good effects and
nice squishy sound, and you hear like the bullet, the bullet like fire into them. It's just like, and then just how like Leslie Nielsen meets his fate, and he's being stubborn and obstinate, like I can hold my breath. As the tide's coming in on him, which I was very curious about. You as an English person, you should be very upset. He was yelling that line, and then we see the comic panel. It's just I can hold my breath.
Without the enunciation?
Yeah, just an ellipses afterwards. Not an exclamation point, just an ellipses. He was clearly shouting.
He was shouting it, man. Yeah. You're right.
Very disconcerting. You know what? That's taking a point off the film for that.
You're taking 1 point off. Grammar. The next short in the film, and I think it's the longest.
Feels like
the longest. It's called The Crate. And this is like I said, I think it feels the longest. I don't know for sure that it is actually the longest, but I think it feels the longest because it tries to navigate between two different plot lines.
I think it's almost like a half hour long.
Yeah.
Because I was checking kind of on the times, and it was like it started like at the hour mark. It didn't get over to almost an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think the reason that it feels so long is because it has to navigate between the two characters that are the main characters in it. There's the professor character who is.
Well, they're all professors.
Well, yeah, but there's.
This is Stephen King's.
You want me to get more specific then?
Yes, as I say, this is Stephen King's take on the intelligentsia of the New England area. Before it was the rich hoity-toities. Now we're dealing with the intelligentsia of New England.
So there's Dexter Stanley.
Awful name.
Better for you. Dexter Stanley actually seems to be like a name that you would expect from a H.P. Lovecraft story. So I feel like that may be what he's going for here, because this is a very Lovecraftian story in terms of the unexpected and the unexplained, and you like can't let it go. Like your curiosity of being a scholar forces you to understand what's in the crate. So I felt like that was a reference to H.P. Lovecraft. So that's probably the reason for the name. But it involves Dexter Stanley, who actually finds this crate in...
No, the janitor does.
Well, the janitor does, yeah. Well, let's give the janitor credit for this. Yeah.
Mike. Janitor Mike.
Mike the janitor.
If this was to be remade today, we all know who'd be playing that janitor. It'd be Danny Trejo.
Yeah. So we got Mike the janitor who finds the crate in a classroom and under the stairwell.
Which, by the way, is this like in the basement of the college? Because it looks so grimy and nasty. Like all the walls are just like smattered with like crap on it. This stairwell has, for some reason, a grate over it, and it's just covered in cobwebs.
I don't know. I don't know where it is. It's not really...
Well, it's in a college hall.
Yeah.
Anderson or Amberson Hall, but I mean... Like, it's just like, when you look at it, it's like, it can't be just because, like, well, it's the 80s. Green and gray concrete walls with smatterings of dirt all over it.
Yeah. I don't know where it is, but they find the crate. They open the crate. They realize that there is a fucking massive monkey-like thing that's...
A Yeti?
Yeah, some sort of Yeti that has...
A hunger for blood?
Yeah. And not only that, it's been in there for, what, 147 years or something like that?
Yeah.
So it's been kept in there and without food for that long.
Which, with its supernatural strength, how did it not break out?
Yeah, that's a good question about how that works throughout the whole thing. There's a really funny scene where Henry's going to try to lock the crate after he's fed his wife to it, and he's like carefully putting a
little padlock
on it, like because he doesn't want to wake the beast. And it's like, yeah, that padlock is like not going to do anything if really
the way
beast...
he was tearing ass.
Yeah, that padlock's not really going to do much of anything. But it's funny because the film treats it just like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Well, the old padlocks work.
Padlocks work, no problem. Maybe it's maybe it can't like burst through silver or something like that, like a vampire. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it is kind of like a lichen.
Yeah. But the two main storylines is that, you know, you have Dexter Stanley who finds the creature and wants to try to get rid of it, and then you have Henry who is sick of his wife, played by Adrienne Barbeau, and because she's such an overbearing bitch.
I got a feeling Stephen King wrote this for Henry to be John Carpenter.
Yeah, could be.
Who was married to Adrienne Barbeau at the time, so yeah, I can just be, you know, just on set of like a different movie, just hearing kind of say, John, and he's just like, ugh, just want to smoke my cigarettes and drink my whiskey.
It's played up very well by Adrienne Barbeau.
Her hair is atrocious in this. It's like the worst of the 80s.
The nice ring locks.
Like per mullet. Ugh.
Yeah. She does a really good job of being an absolute bitch in this. Not only
like a scene at the party, like everyone's like, "Oh my god, can you just shut up?" And she's just constantly like going on and on and on.
And there's that great scene too where Henry imagines that he pulls out a gun and shoots her at the party, and everybody just starts clapping like golf claps.
Bullseye! Great shot. That's a really good shot. Yeah.
It's a fun, like again, that's another. Like we said, something to tide you over, not super funny. The Crate definitely has its moments where it goes full on comedy. Most of the time when you see those flash sideways of Henry imagining him killing his wife in numerous ways. So you have him shooting her, you have him grabbing his tie and strangling her with it. All of these are great, and again, these are scenes where you as the viewer are also like, clap, clap, clap. Thank God she's gone. But eventually, the only thing that occurs is that Henry gets the idea that since there's this crate with this beast in it, might as well feed Wilma to it. So instead of me actually doing the dirty work, I'm going to just feed it to this beast and get rid of her.
I love the obscene note he writes to her about why she has to go down to the...
just the most ridiculous note of...
Like, this poor girl's possibly been beaten to death or something, and she's like, oh my god, what? I gotta go check. And she's pouring, like, the world's shittiest white Russian of just, like, milk and vodka and a glass. Then she's driving down to the campus and comes out of the car, drink still in hand, like, oh, God, I gotta make sure I have a good drink, while seeing this. This poor girl who's possibly been raped, beaten, and murdered, the way Henry's making it sound.
Yeah, no, the weird thing about that, too, is that, like, she seems almost giddy to go see it.
Well, because she loves gossip.
I know she does, but that's a really strange thing to be giddy about.
It's the 80s.
I guess so.
No one cares.
She's like,
Better
yes.
her than me.
She's like, I can't believe it. Dexter has just raped and murdered a woman. I can't wait to see the damage. And then Henry also, when he meets her.
I was thinking, she probably would take like, we get to clean this up?
Yeah.
We get to clean this up?
And Henry, when he meets her, too, is like, you'll never believe it. She's moaning underneath the stairwell. She's not dead yet. And she's just like, oh, my God, I better go check it out. I've always liked the crate just for its over-the-top nature. It's a ridiculous story all around. Again, a lot like Father's Day in the ways that it plays out and the vengeance in it. And but it has its moments too. Like I really like the cinematography in it and the lighting. Because like I said, and I mentioned it in the beginning of this episode in the intro, they're attacked by the beast in the crate, and then all of a sudden the lighting changes from just normal basement lighting to red and blue.
Get that too as soon as they open the crate. As soon as Mike and Dexter open the crate, it goes like blood red and
Yeah. Yeah, you know something's coming. If that happens to you when you're opening a box,
run.
Like a Christmas Story, and you just won potentially a bowling alley. Run. Yeah. There's a beast in that box. But the crate, I think, is a fun story. Again, not my favorite, but I think it's probably one of my favorites. Although I think it's a little bit it runs a little too long. It feels too long. I think because of the amount of story that it does tell, and especially because of all those flash sideways sequences of showing how Henry's wants to kill his wife. Adds a bit of running time. It's weird, but I appreciate when the anthology films have the same running time for each of their stories. It's a weird little.
Well, it makes it feel like a TV episode.
It does, yeah.
Like everything gets the same standard cut time.
And I think the crate just runs a little too long on that. But other than that, it's another fun short from there. The last short that we get is about cockroaches.
If you hate bugs, like especially cockroaches, this one's gonna scare the shit out of you.
It's a creepy, crawly little segment, I think.
I can only imagine what it was like for them to shoot like all the scenes with all the fucking like the mass amounts of cockroaches.
Yeah, I know. This one's called "They're Creeping Up on You," and it's a sort of a futuristic sci-fi-esque storyline. Not something that we get much in Creepshow, but there's it's like a weird
a guy who's trapped in an apartment and escaped from New York is.
Yeah, he's like working on some sort of scientific discovery, and he's
a business dealer.
Is he?
Yeah,
is that what it is?
Yeah, those are stock numbers there.
The stock numbers.
Yeah,
okay.
No, he's
just working on stocks.
Takes other people's businesses and stuff. Right? He's like just a venture capitalist.
Gotcha.
That's why that one guy kills
himself. Yeah,
but no, it's his whole setup's because he's a germaphobe. So
yeah, so he's concerned.
It's not futuristic. He's just got the money to have.
It looks like it. Yeah,
it does make it seem like it's this like really futuristic, like with the '80s. Think in 20 years, what
Especially like the doorknob area, the doorbell when they're answering, and he's got like the little peephole, and it gives them sort of like robotic voices because they're looking through this little peephole that apparently keeps most people out. I don't know. So E.G. Marshall plays Upson Pratt.
What a name.
Upson Pratt. And he's really a giant asshole in this film.
He's Scrooge.
He's almost like curly from the Three Musketeers with that hair, but also as Scrooge, who is like just such a miserly asshole who thinks that everybody owes him everything. It's even close to dropping the N-word at some points here in terms of
that's great. You're colored.
Not so subtle racism.
You're colored. You'll make it well in your job because you're colored.
Yeah. Actually, he does say person of color, but it's still pretty racist in here. Yeah. And I do like, I mean, I like that because you can see like, that just, again, gives
he doesn't
more
use person of color when, he's not knocking on his door, like, to help him out. He's used to saying other things.
Yeah, person of color just jumps out when he's actually at the door, yeah. I do like this one because he is just such an asshole, and throughout the whole thing, you're really actively rooting against him. And it's, again, another really simple element to it, that this germaphobe is then rampaged by cockroaches throughout his entire apartment. There's not much more to it than that.
I do love the idea when the Black Doorman, Mr. White, comes up and he's like, well, we're going to try to get a hold of the only exterminating service that's open 24/7. Because if you think about it, like, really, like, what exterminating service is open 24/7?
Right. He's like, I tried to think about it, and I can only come up with one that's open at 11:30 at night.
Yeah. As he's constantly I mean, granted, if I had cockroaches running all over my apartment like that, I would be like, get them fucking over here,
Yeah, I think this short is really good about the panic that would be involved with seeing just hundreds of cockroaches pouring out of your walls. Because that would be really disconcerting. I mean, one or two, you're like, fuck, this is really an annoyance, and you'd smack them, and then you'd be done with it. And so that's sort of how the segment starts off. But then afterwards, you start to see that they have kind of proliferated in there, not just in one or two areas. They're starting to get more and more prevalent throughout the apartment.
And he does have a great line when he says, like, once you have, like, one of them, you're going to have them forever because they infest, into the conduits everywhere, into the heart of your buildings. And, and then you can't get rid of them.
And it's almost like a metaphor for his own heart. And then, so you have that. And then also, there's a really effective scene where he's making like this granola or whatever. I don't know what it is that he's eating.
In a food processor?
Yeah, in a food processor.
It's weird. I didn't know.
I don't know what it is, like bran flakes or granola or something like that.
Yeah, why is he food processed? I didn't get it.
I don't know what it is either. But he processes it up and then he goes to check it out because it tastes funny, and he finds like parts of cockroaches in his food.
And then pours out the bran flakes, and there's a bunch of them that come pouring on out.
That's a great scene. That's really a gross out scene for people who don't like bugs. But yeah,
it gets worse.
It gets worse. Yeah, there's just so many. This would be a really tough segment to film. I mean, just because it's clear that they did not use like fake bugs. I mean, they're all real cockroaches, and some cockroaches were harmed in the making of this movie for sure. There's a lot of splattered cockroaches, smashed cockroaches,
spraying them right on them. Just
sprayed cockroaches. Those poor cockroaches. Those were acting cockroaches. You know what? They were just trying to make a break.
They all had their SAG card.
George Romero hit the casting couch with those. In that final scene, too, of all the cockroaches just kind of pouring out of Upson Pratt, they
burrowed
infested his body.
That's awesome.
That's a great scene.
Yeah, really well done. Tom Savini did a really good job, getting the body to be able to open up in certain points for the bugs to come out.
Do you know what I really like a lot is actually they did this to E.G. Marshall, but they show there's a cockroach that's burrowing out of his face. And there's just like this single solitary line of blood that starts. Mm-hmm. And that's a really good shot. It's like,
and you can see one in the top of his forehead.
Yeah,
that didn't come out, but you think like it's going to break through his head,
his
brain, but it doesn't.
That's a really good moment and a really good scene that they shot there. That's surprising in its effectiveness for the time with the gore effects. I think they did a really good job of that.
I would say this probably has the best gore effects out of all the...
Yeah, probably, yeah. And just the sheer amount of, like, how difficult it would be to film this.
Especially at the end, the whole fucking room's covered, So that's,
The cleanup crew were not happy afterwards about trying to rope down all the rest of the cockroaches.
10,000 cockroaches.
Yeah. Probably a closed set, I would assume. So yeah, this is another fun one. I like this one quite a bit. I think it's probably one of my favorites. It also, I think, is one of the shortest ones. It seems like it's probably shorter than most of the other ones.
Probably a little under 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think it is.
Because it starts at like $1.40, and so it ends.
Yeah, and just because I think it's just because of the simplism of it, you don't want to overstay your welcome with it. You don't want to keep going with just having him see more and more bugs that we get boring fast. So. Definitely just kind of gets in, gets out, grosses out its audience and runs with it. All right, so we did the five segments throughout Creepshow. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we give this thing a rating?
How do you think Tom Savini's gore overall was?
I think he does a good job. I don't think a Creepshow in particular is super gory. It's more about the effects really. I think that he does a good job with some of the zombie effects, and I think that they're done on purpose to sort of match, like,
and look a little campy.
Yeah, and look a little campy. They're not meant to be specifically like realistic. I think the Father's Day zombie is probably the best one. I think because of the way that the skeleton looks and things like
decay,
that.
The rot,
the decay, the maggots that they put on there. I think all of those are probably the best designed. But I think all of it is really good. I don't think they skimped out. But again, they're designed to be a little bit cheesier on purpose. So it's not about the gore per se as it is the campiness of the film. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's definitely very good. Especially because it's not trying to be overly gory, but it's the moments where there is supposed to be gore, it's utilized well. Looks good. I think he did a really good job on the effects. Definitely very believable and very enjoyable to look at.
I think the thing that stood out to me the most about the film was just the lighting that we had. With them being able to match like how a comic book, an EC Comics book looked, is pretty impressive. And I think that aesthetic just adds a lot to, even more so than just like the paneling that you get throughout the shots of them like going from like later to earlier and stuff like that. I think that the lighting itself is really what makes this film so interesting and gives it that comic book feel.
I really like the transitions. Mm-hmm. Like those comic book transitions where every time they do it, it's like a page turn. You get like in the corner, like maybe like a meanwhile or like later on.
Yeah, see a little couple of ads there. There's a Christmas ad in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see that one.
But even during just like the main story is like when like you have like you'd see like like a transition from one part of the scene to the next part of the scene in that story, and you'd get like the nice like page turn, and it's like meanwhile or later on. Nice effect. I like that,
Yep.
I really like the fact that they embraced the theme of what they were going for, of it being a horror comic book.
Yeah. All right, so on a scale of 0 to 10, Tom Atkins toupees. Though we don't know if it's really a toupee.
You'll have to ask him yourself.
Yeah. What would you give Creepshow?
Give it an 8 out of 10. It's a very good film. It's one that I've always enjoyed. Kind of watch like once every 2 years, 3 years. It's not my favorite Romero film, but it's definitely one that's very good, very enjoyable. I think all the stories are enjoyable, though some of them do, as Ryan said, get a little long in the tooth because they're all very simple concepts. So they all it definitely probably could have been shortened down a little bit. But I think everyone did a terrific job acting. You got some big names in here, and you got some unknown people. It's great seeing like cameos from Tom Savini and Stephen King. Just Stephen King alone is worth coming to watch this movie because he's so just enjoyably coked up and delightful. Effects are great. I think the cinematography is very interesting. I think out of all the Romero films, this might be one of the best shot films by him. It's probably up there with Day of the Dead and his most visually interesting film. So I definitely think this is a great anthology film. It's definitely worth the watch. Definitely worth checking out. There's a reason why it's 30 years later, it's held up.
Yeah, we give it an 8 out of 10 as well. I think it's really good. Creepshow is actually one that I haven't seen that many times. I've seen it a few times, but not something that I kind of recurrently watch. But I do think that it's a really fun film, and this time around I really did appreciate some of the elements that I might not have noticed too much on previous watches, like the lighting, some of the campiness of it, the gore effects, Tom Savini being in it. Even recognizing that Joe King was in it. It's kind of fun because you can see, Stephen King throwing a lot of things in from his own life into this film. So I think they do a good job with all of it. Lots of names in here. Everybody does a really good job. Standouts being probably Leslie Nielsen, maybe Ted Danson as well in both that in the same short. Adrienne Barbeau doing a really good job there too. And you just get a really fun, kind of spooky, kind of funny anthology film to watch with friends, laugh about, and enjoy. It's a great time all around.
And I definitely think seeing this on Blu-ray remastered definitely enhances all those visual effects and the lighting. Just seeing it now for the first time on the Blu-ray, I'm kind of having a hard time thinking of. I mean, I knew know the lighting's pronounced, but it's very vibrant now. And I think that just adds to it.
Yeah, it definitely stands out quite a bit. It's amazing how vibrant it is in some scenes. Yeah. All right, Creepshow, very fun.
Would you say this is one of Romero's best shot films?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, and most visually interesting?
Yeah, visually interesting, aesthetically pleasing. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely one where he went above and beyond to match comic books. Yeah. And with that said,
we move on to the next.
That's right. We move on to the next film in Antholoween. We're still in the 80s for this one.
Because Ryan spoiled it last time.
Yeah, I did, yeah. So you know what it is, obviously. But we're doing The Twilight Zone, the movie.
By the Peele?
By Jordan Peele, yeah. That's right, yeah. No, this is infamously the one where people were killed when making it.
Thank God it wasn't John Lithgow.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll be back next week with The Twilight Zone, the movie. We're going to do that one. So we'll still be in the 80s. So keep your hair permed and your bell bottom. Well, not bell bottoms really.
No, because by the
80s, by that time it was probably out.
84, 85, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So not that time, but
Tom Atkins fixed his hair by then.
Yeah. So we'll be back with that. So stick around for Antholoween. Like we said, make sure you check out J Movie Talk podcast. We are doing an episode on Phantasm 2 over there. So hopefully you can have a listen to that. And you can find us on any podcasting app that you use. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean. Any of those you can find us on. Subscribe to us and give us a nice review. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We're on Twitter at Blood and Black Rum. And we have an email address at bloodandblackrumPodcast@gmail.com. You can also donate to us on Patreon at patreon.com/Blood and Black Rum Podcast. Keep our podcast going with all your donations, and we really appreciate it. Thanks for listening to our episodes for this Antholoween season. We hope you return for The Twilight Zone, the movie.
Take care.